one of the things that you mentioned in your blog is that, this impact of telemedicine on, COVID-19. Can you speak to that for a minute?
Sure, sure. Well, one of the things that was pretty funny is I was thinking about this podcast over the weekend, and I was watching something, and it was a Microsoft commercial. And Microsoft has something called Microsoft Teams, and they were interviewing doctors, and the doctors were saying they were getting like 500 patients a month that were doing telemedicine. Now they're up to about 5,000 a day.
Wow.
And so what happens here is that a pandemic happens. Nobody could see it happening. And, healthcare providers had to either respond or die. And a lot of them, I will compliment them. A lot of them were up within 48 to 72 hours. I mean, I'm sure there was bumps in the road, but the adoption rate of medical in the medical community was insane. And what I also think sort of happened is that Zoom and other platforms where we did teleconferencing just as casual people, like the technology and the crisis sort of landed at the same time. And it wasn't this huge leap. You know what I mean? It wasn't like this thing where people were like, well, how's this going to work? It's like, all right, well, if I can figure out how to log in and I can figure out how to do that, that would be great. But
so some of the framework was already built, so it wasn't that big of a jump to get there.
Yep.
So how about from a marketing perspective? I know you mentioned in your blog that it's a two-step approach. So you kind of have first step is short term and second step is long term. So can you speak to the short term? What are things that people in the telemarketing or telehealth industry, what can they do short term to really help get themselves placed properly in the marketplace?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a great question. So what was happening here is that we were reaching out to our clients, and they're saying, we want to communicate effectively to our clients. And so they did a lot of the base level stuff on their homepage of their website and stuff that was saying like, I'm going to need to explain our COVID procedures, explain emergency stuff. We're going to talk about our commitment to cleanliness and making sure that we're locking this thing down. But then what it also tried to do is it tried to communicate, we're still here for you, even though we might not be able to treat all patients. And so what happened was in the short term, they basically did the most basic things, but at the same exact time, because they didn't know what was going to happen, almost every medical community or basically client that we had immediately went into a spending freeze as well. And so when they went into a spending freeze, they had to get really creative on how they were going to market to their clients. And so one of the things that we recommended that they do is be in a scenario where if they have certain doctors are on furlough or not working as much, what we were trying to say is make the most of that time or that opportunity, because you might not ever get this again. And so we were talking about tactics in the blog as far as trying to say, hey, you know what? If I have a subject matter expert, that's usually the number one person that I can't get their time in the normal world. But because of this crisis, because their time management might be a little bit different, you might be able to get them to communicate about their services and their commitments and the things that they do, simply because they have the time. And so to do that, you don't need that expensive of technology. We said, you know what, you really want to get video. We want to get involved in video. And I even recommended the same program we're on right now. It's a program called StreamYard. I think it costs around $20 a month. And with that program, subject matter experts from certain hospitals and stuff like that would be able to jump on and they'd say, hey, you know what? If you've got foot pain, this is what an Achilles tear is, or this is what plantar fasciitis is. And what happens here is that they're going to be able to develop this library of content that when the crisis is over, they're going to have a library of content that they never would have had time for.
Right.